What is going on YouTube? This is Acid Root. So I'm going to review the sixth album by new metal band Limp Bizkit. Basically, this project is called Still Sucks and it came out in the fall of 2021. Now, it had been a while since they dropped Gold Cobra, which came out in the late spring of 2011, but this particular album came out a decade later, and the particular kind of thing about it was it's just how washed up Limp Bizkit kind of sounds on this particular album. It's not to say that they suck. This album says still sucks and that type of stuff. They had gotten like a lot of flack. It's typical Limp Bizkit fare for them to catch a lot of flack. People hate Fred Durst and those sorts of things. But I kind of look after it. Although this is not an excellent album in any sense, and it's not really particular. It's not a horrible project, but it just does not convey them in the proper light. And it's kind of the same problem I had with like Godsmack's 2023 album when I reviewed that recently. It just kind of felt like some of these new metal bands that were extremely popular back in the 90s and early 2000s and things like that. It just kind of started these folks had just kind of started to sound more washed up, and it's just difficult just because I know that Limp Bizkit was kind of an angsty band. Limp Bizkit definitely had some rambunctious angst back in the late 90s and early 2000s as far as that kind of happened, but once they started to phase out, I mean, it wasn't as noticeable back in 2005 or 2011 when they had kind of taken a break, but way out in 2021, just with all these different sounds that have kind of happened and amongst some of that type of stuff, it is really, I don't want to say it sounds dated, but it just kind of sounds like a fish out of water, I would have to say. It's just kind of the concept about it. It's just an interesting kind of concept, but there are a few gems on this particular album, but there's not many. I kind of feel like Limp Bizkit's heyday was easily, and the thing about it is I've given a number of Limp Bizkit projects like 10s out of 10. So this is definitely kind of a surprise that this one didn't hit heavier like I was. This is definitely kind of a surprise that this project didn't hit heavier like I was feeling it was supposed to. It's just kind of odd just because I think I gave, because I want to say I think I gave Gold Cobra a 10 out of 10 back when I reviewed it back in early 2016. So it's just kind of the concept. I would also say I gave their 2005 album, which is called like The Unquestionable Truth or something like that. I gave that a 10. I reviewed that back in September. So this is kind of the concept. This is probably I'm going to go ahead and say that this is Limp Bizkit's worst project. Not to say it's a horrid, not to say it's complete crap in that sort of sense, but it just does not really have much really highly to speak of. This is probably their overall worst project. All of their earlier projects are better than this. I feel like Gold Cobra is way better. Anything they did between 1997 and 2005, any of those particular albums are just better. It's just kind of the concept of this album just does not have a lot to speak of. And it kind of just shows, it kind of showcases, this album kind of showcases this band in a poor light. And that's just kind of the concept about it. I do think that they have a lot of good albums, definitely some 10 out of 10s. They definitely have some 10 out of 10 albums in particular. I would feel like Chocolate Starfish, maybe Significant Other, some of those type ones. Gold Cobra is pretty good. $3 Bill Y'all is pretty good. There's just some nice ones that kind of have happened. I remember I gave like their 2003 album, which I forget what that one's called, a 10 out of 10. I don't know if I would still give it that now, but I gave a number of their projects 10s. It's just kind of the concept about it, but just being able to say and stuff. We'll go ahead and talk about the singles here, and you'll start to see what I'm talking about. It's just kind of the concept about it. But the first single was Dad Vibes. So the first single is Dad Vibes. This is a particularly kind of leery, dark night shindig kind of vibes that this song kind of has. It's vintage Limp Bizkit, and it's just kind of got a mellow, calmer feel about it, but it's still hit new metal, I would have to say. So this is a pretty nice one, I would have to say. But the thing about this particular song and most of the songs on this album is it just kind of has like a more kind of middle-aged pitch about it. And I realize that Fred Durst and some of these folks are kind of in their late 40s, or I realize that Fred Durst and some of these folks are kind of in their 50s as far as that kind of happens, just more middle-aged type fare as far as that kind of goes. But it's just too bad that some of this energy is just more lambent and just kind of more washed up and just kind of less refined as far as that kind of happens. Definitely lacks the furor of like their early 2000s kind of fare. I mean, I think that's kind of noticeable by this point, but you just have to really suppose that it's just kind of the concept that Dad Vibes is at least, I feel like Dad Vibes is at least somewhat of a bop, but it just kind of sounds out of the ordinary. It just kind of sounds like a fish out of water as far as that kind of happens. Just kind of one that's just kind of less, like it just kind of feels like something of a relic compared to the times that are just throughout today. I mean, new metal is just different, especially in the 2020s and that type of stuff. So it just really feels like something that was like 18, 20, something odd years prior before that kind of happened and stuff. It's just kind of it's just kind of an odd atmosphere as far as that kind of happens, but it works. I mean, I like the concept of Limp Bizkit being around in the 2020s, but they really sound like a relic at this particular stage. This is kind of the concept, but it is a hit song. It's probably one of the best songs on the album, I would have to say. Just a nice, leery, kind of concert-like vibe that it kind of has. Just a nice kind of mosh, or just kind of nice, dark night shindig as far as that kind of happens. And then I would have to say Out of Style is the second single, and this one came out like way later in like early 2023, so it's recent. This promotion wrapped on this album pretty recently. I would have to say just at the beginning of this year. It's kind of an odd song, but I didn't really care for this one as much. This one's just kind of like a soul searching type one. This song is kind of a mixture between Take a Look Around and Break Stuff as far as it kind of happens, but it just doesn't really do a good job of that. It lacks a lot of distinction, just overall kind of vibe. This one's just not quite as compelling as like earlier Limp Bizkit as far as it kind of happens. Just does not have the real assortment and compactness and distinction as far as it probably needs. So it's just kind of a dud as far as that kind of happens. I mean, it does have some good production work as far as like the instrumentation of the band and that type of stuff, but it's still, I mean, for the most part, it just does not hit like they normally would. It just lacks finesse and just things like that as far as that kind of happens. But I'm gonna go ahead and recommend the 3.5 songs I recommend out of 12 on here. There's not many. I definitely feel like I was saying, this is probably Limp Bizkit's worst album, but I just would have to say it's just purely over the fact that their heyday is kind of behind them more so than their skill set just not being there. I mean, they still do have some decent production work and still some decent vibes lyrically and that type of stuff and good energy. It's just kind of the concept that this feels a lot more washed up and kind of forgotten about as far as that kind of happens. Just kind of has been type energy. The 3.5 songs I recommend. The 3.5 songs I recommend would be Dad Vibes, Turn It Up, Bitch, Pill Popper, and the Almost song is Dirty Rotten Biscuit. So, to talk about the Almost song Dirty Rotten Biscuit, this one's kind of a rowdy, crunk ready, riff heavy thriller. I would have to say it's a decent song, but it lacks the song is decent, but it lacks distinction and desire. I would have to say it's just not quite as compelling as like earlier Limp Bizkit. Like once again, compared to albums like Significant Other and Chocolate Starfish and like their 2003 album, some of those type ones, as far as that kind of happens, just doesn't have the same appeal as far as that kind of happens. I mean, this is probably like the most riff heavy one on the album, Dirty Rotten Biscuit. This is the craziest one on here, I would have to say, apart from Pill Popper and maybe a little bit of Barnacle. But I just would have to say it just doesn't have the compellingness. I feel like even if the band work is particularly good, it just doesn't have like the sheer bite and this overall snappiness that they had. I don't know. I kind of question why the songwriting was just not better as far as that kind of happens. Just, I mean, I realize that they're kind of 2 decades past their prime as far as that kind of happens, but I still kind of feel like maybe it should have had some degree of dislike chartability. But I don't know. I think Dad Vibes at least chart. I'm not really sure, but that's just kind of the concept. But talk about another good riff heavy one on here. That would be Pill Popper. Basically, this is like a loud and noisy kind of vintage 90s new metal sound. I definitely like this one. It's riveting, mosh ready. This song has some riveting, mosh ready energy, but it sounds current. So this is kind of the concept. This sounds like something that like people in their 50s and late 40s would have, just popping pills and having prescriptions and that type of stuff as far as that kind of happens. Just more med kind of type stuff as far as that kind of happens. But I just look after it's just kind of the concept of middle age as far as that kind of goes. But I just look at the concept. It's a good song, but it just sounds current to like 2020's times as far as for folks that were Gen X's. This kind of sounds current to times for folks that were Gen X's and older millennials as far as that kind of happens just within the concept of it. But it is a pretty riff heavy song. Definitely a pretty decent party ready tune if you can negate the lyrics somewhat as far as it kind of happens. But then a pretty nice, drowsy kind of song on here is Turn It Up, Bitch. Definitely like this one. This is probably one of the best beats on the album, I would have to say. Definitely pretty nice rap rock kind of beat. This is a sleepy kind of smoke a few rock rap beat. I definitely feel like it's sluggish and stuck. I feel like this is a great song to smoke swishers to and that sort of stuff, but it's sluggish and stuck, but the offhanded vibes hit pretty good. So I would have to say about this particular one, once again, this is one of the album's best beats. It's a very stuck and kind of drowsy type one to kind of get as far as it kind of happens, but there's just not a ton of songs like it. This is another kind of bewildered kind of one and just more languished kind of one, similar to Pill Popper, that just sounds a lot older than what it probably needs to. It's just kind of the concept. Dad Vibes, Turn It Up, Bitch, Pill Popper, all of these kind of sound like over the hill in a lot of ways. This is kind of the concept about it. I mean, it's too bad that there's not more prime ready Limp Bizkit. I think that they probably still could have cranked out some rumblers as far as that kind of happens, but this is kind of the concept, considering that they were in their 50s as far as that kind of happened. But these are some good ones, but they just kind of sound relic like as far as that kind of happens. But so yeah, to talk about some of the songs I didn't enjoy on here, there's just a lot of these kind of songs on here that just don't add up to like much kind of amountedness. I feel like the songwriting is just worse on this particular album. There's some kind of like acoustic and kind of more homely songs on here, like Don't Change, Empty Hole, and Goodbye, that just don't hit the nail on the head. I mean, I know that they've done songs like the single that they did off of $3 Bill Y'all, which I forget what that one's called. It's like a cover song that they did. I mean, they just didn't really nail like some of these more homely type songs and just more cover type songs as far as that kind of happens. Just the more kind of down tempo type tunes. They really didn't have the affinity like they did with like they really didn't have like a song like rearranged in them this time. It's kind of a disappointment that that didn't happen. I kind of felt like Barnacle was kind of like a hype type tune it was trying to be, but it just didn't really have like the lyric. I just kind of felt like the lyric kind of vibes were just not as compelling on Barnacle. It just was not a very interesting one. Snacky Poo was trying to be like another song like Snacky Poo was trying to be a compelling beat like Turn It Up Bitch, but it just didn't quite nail it quite as well as that one at all. I would have to say it was just a very poor one compared to that one. Some of the new metal beats on here are just not very good. This rap rock type stuff just didn't work out for him. These rap rock beats just didn't work out quite as well for them this time. They're just not as compelling, I would have to say. And then Love the Hate, I kind of felt like Love the Hate was a decently kind of compelling idea, but it just didn't nail it quite as well as it needed to. I mean, that one probably could have been replaced with like a more riff. Love the Hate probably could have been replaced with like a riff heavy type tune that just could have carried the energy a lot better. So there's just a lot of these. There's just a lot of these on this particular album that are just pretty poor and just lack distinction, just overall quality as far as that kind of happens. I just feel like the songwriting is just at their worst at this particular type vibe. They sound out of sorts, they sound out of their prime, they just sound winded and just overall just disdained and just kind of dismayed and just not in very good shape as far as that kind of happens. Just a lot of these just didn't really have a good vibe as far as that kind of happens. There are some decent ones, but even those kind of sound over the hill and just kind of relic like as far as that kind of happens. So it's just this album just has a lot of poor subjects and energy as far as that kind of happens. Just does not display them in a very good light. So me basically recommending 3.5 songs out of 12 on this particular album. I'm gonna go ahead and give this album like a 2.5 out of 10. I think that's barely enough, but I could give it. I just did not really enjoy this album much of it all. I just did not enjoy this album much of it all. I would have to say it's just kind of the concept about it. The social score, I'll go ahead and the social score I'll give like a 3.75 though, because I feel like there are some decent gems on here, even if they are kind of relic like. I would have to say they kind of sound over the hill. I would definitely have to say, but it's just kind of the concept that if you can tolerate the fashion, if you are in your like early 50s or late 40s or even late 30s, something like that, and you're kind of starting to get more over the hill, I just would have to say it's kind of the concept of just embracing middle age and just kind of being more over the hill as far as that kind of happens. But I look after some of these tunes are just kind of, I mean, they just overall lack the bite of Limp Bizkit's earlier days, and it's just apparent. It's not just something that's like maybe you notice, maybe you don't. It's vividly apparent on this particular album. They know that they're over the hill, and that's just kind of the concept. It's not to say this is bad. I mean, there are some gems on here. It's just kind of in a more bewildered light as far as that kind of happens. So 2.5 score, 3.75 social. In terms of the future, like Limp Bizkit has taken a decade between this album and Gold Cobra, so it might be a while, and I somehow am unsure what's going to happen with their next album, I would have to say. But it's just kind of the concept about it. This is not them in a very good light, I would have to say. It's just kind of the concept. But in terms of the future, I think I already said that in terms of the future, but just the concept of it, I would have to say I basically reviewed every Limp Bizkit album. The only last thing I'm going to review is Stampede of the Disco Elephants, which is kind of floating around. Stampede of the Disco Elephants kind of has like a bootleg track list, so I'm going to get to reviewing that project at some point. We'll see what happens with that just to see if that fares better, and I think it probably will, but that's just kind of the concept. So yeah, check out the Limp Bizkit. So yeah, check out the Limp Bizkit playlist. I've reviewed every Limp Bizkit album, so it's definitely worth it just to see all the stuff that they've done in their prime years and some of that stuff. So definitely check it out. But this is okay, but it's very much lacking.